Hey, I'm Rachael.
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Beyond a Ballot. Rachael, how are you?
I'm good. What a week.
I feel like we start every podcast by saying, what a week.
What a week.
But truly, it has been yet another what a week. We have a very big episode today, which we have been so excited about.
So excited.
We will say it's going to be a long one. We're having two conversations with two extraordinary women. So grab a coffee, go for a long walk, take a car ride, or maybe listen to this in two parts. But this is the kind of episode that you don't want to miss end to end.
It's an investment episode
with
two women who have held more cabinet portfolios than we have children combined.
It's true.
Yep. They're amazing. All right. So buckle up. We're going to stop talking so you can listen to them. And here we go.
Our first guest served as a Conservative Member of Parliament for 11 years. She was appointed to federal cabinet in 2008 and held the natural resources, labor, and transport portfolios. In opposition, she served as shadow cabinet minister for finance and deputy leader of the opposition. In 2019, she was defeated by a new Liberal Member of Parliament. Here to tell us all about her experience and a woman who really needs no introduction, the amazing Lisa Raitt. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Amanda. That's very nice. I appreciate that. I guess for your listeners, I don't need a lot of introduction.
No, you don't.
We did fail to mention that you also ran for the leadership of the Conservative Party as well.
That's right.
Which is a whole other feat. Leadership races are very difficult. And the fact that you threw your name in there is something I very much admire. It was probably not easy.
Interesting choices I made. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's dive into those interesting choices. I'm so thrilled to have you with us, Lisa, to talk about your many, many years in federal politics, your many, many years in federal cabinet. Let's start from the beginning. Who are you? What made you decide to run for federal politics? And what was that decision-making process like?
So many questions.
Yeah.
And you don't have enough time.
No.
I grew up in Cape Breton Island. My family was tangentially involved in politics. I had a grandfather who was a counselor. I had an uncle who was really interested in politics, helped on mayoralty elections. I had a brother-in-law who was deputy mayor of the town at one point in time, Sydney, Nova Scotia. And all of that kind of allowed me to be steeped in politics, but not partisan politics. I was never involved in partisan politics. And I remember my first time voting. It was my first time voting. I was 18 years old. I went with my grandmother to the polling station in the junior high school. And after we left, I turned to her and I said, "So who did you vote for?" And she said, "It's none of your business." And that's kind of how it was in our family, right?
Yeah.
Scottish. McCormick is my last name. They did not tell you how they voted. Ironically, 30 years after that, it's those people that drove me nuts who would never tell me how they were going to vote, because all I want to know on the doorstep is, how are you going to vote? So I don't bother with you, or I bother with you. So politics wasn't foreign to me. There was lots of discussion about it. I was always aware of it. I followed it. When I went to high school, I sought out student council. When I went to university, I ran and lost. St. FX was not good to me. It was good to Sean Fraser, not so good to me. And then I went on to grad school, got involved in student politics there. That, interestingly, is where I met Brad Levine. And you guys know Brad Levine is NDP, and we were on opposite sides of an issue when we're both at the Canadian Federation of Students. So it's kind of like when I do a Monday panel with them on CBC, it's like, here we go again. It's like 40 years later. You and me, Brad, still duking it out.
So good.
So it's that was university, that was grad school. I did the same in law school, ended up being the president of our little association kind of thing. And then I needed to get a job, and I did. I went to law school. I did my undergrad. I did my what do we call them? Bar ads, we called them at the time, but the bar admission.
Yep.
Ended up after a long period of going from firm to an internship in the UK and then coming back again, I ended up getting a job with the Toronto Port Authority. And I became their general counsel, and I became their corporate secretary. They were just fresh out of the box, a new government business enterprise that had a lot of governance problems and a lot of problems with something called an island airport at the time. My file was to help build a bridge to the island airport. And this was back in 1998 through to 2003. It was a big chunk of my life.
Oh my God.
That was a very, very political file. David Miller got elected on the premise that he was not going to allow the link to happen. Paul Martin got involved. I said some pretty, I would say, naive things to a reporter for the Toronto Star, ended up on the front page when I said that Paul Martin wasn't briefed. He didn't know what he was talking about. And they were actually having their caucus in Toronto that day. So it was really bad timing on my part.
Wow.
But I ended up, picking a fight with the government over this. And I was CEO at the time of the Port Authority. But that got the attention of a lot of people. It got the attention of the Liberals and it got the attentions of the Conservatives. So both of them approached me at different points in time in my life. So Liberals approached me probably in 2005 to see before I said nasty things about the Prime Minister. And it was Senator David Smith, who's now passed away, but he and I had lots of conversations about it because the natural thought that a Cape Brettoner was a Liberal is probably a good guess, right? But it was in 2008 when the Conservatives pursued me. It wasn't just let's have a conversation. It was let's close the deal. And the reason being, guys, was Garth Turner was the MP for the riding. And Garth Turner was elected in 2006 and he immediately fell out with the Conservatives to the point where Gordie Brown, now passed away, actually moved the motion to kick him out of caucus completely. See, Conservatives have been having internal problems for a long period of time. It's not just recent things.
Everyone is.
So they kicked him out. He became an independent first. Eventually, he moved to sit with Stéphane Dion, and the Conservatives just wanted that seat back. And when they realized I lived there, I was 40. I had 2 kids under 7 at the time. I got on the GO train, went to work in Toronto. Like I was from central casting, essentially, of what they were trying to get the vote of at the time. And they said, so this gets to the point of how I made the decision. So they came to me and they said, you got to make a decision. And by the way, the election had already been called.
Oh my gosh.
The writ had been dropped.
Talk about
it's August. And I said, I need a little time to think about it. And a guy that, good Liberal, Paul Pellegrini, he's going to hate me telling the story. Paul Pellegrini sits me down and we do a matrix and we talk about what happens if I win and they win, if I lose and they lose, if I win, they lose. We did the whole matrix. And it came out that 3 of the 4 times I did pretty okay. So if you're going to try now. And he goes, it's killing me, but I think you'd make a great cabinet minister. And I said, we're not even talking about that. I just got to get elected. And we didn't talk about cabinet or anything like that. And when the polls got tighter and tighter, the Prime Minister came to my riding to give me a bit of a boost. And that was the first time I got to see the inside of a political machine. Because other than that, I was knocking on doors and I didn't know what was going on. And to say you're drinking from the fire hose is an understatement. So I got elected election night. Garth Turner got so mad he wouldn't accept my phone call to have that, congratulatory kind of thing. I won by 7,000 votes. And that was it. By the way, one of the people who actually gave me the biggest lift to get elected is Seamus O'Regan.
Really?
Seamus was the host of Canada AM. Right. Canada AM went to the battle ridings. My riding was one featured. They featured a little bit of a debate between me and Garth. And Seamus tossed me a really easy question.
Wow.
But I say it's the power of the X-ring, because both of us went to St. FX. So there you go. I've got lots of Liberals encouraging me to run. Yeah. So it's kind of odd then they spent so much time trying to get rid of me in 2019. But that's another story.
We're going to get to that.
So I ran, and then much to my surprise, ended up, much to many people's surprises, I ended up in cabinet. And I kind of did politics reversed. I did cabinet, then I did opposition, and then I was unelected. And most people lose on your first time, then you end up in opposition, and then you become a cabinet minister. And I did it completely reverse.
So I'm curious, because you said you were a mom of a couple of young kids at the time, and clearly politics was a little bit in your blood because there were all of these kind of like stops in between. But had you thought to yourself before the parties reached out to you, had you ever thought, I'm going to do that one day?
I had been told most of my life that you should be prime minister one day. Only because small town, I could advocate and speak well. I did well in debating, and that would be the natural inclination. Oh, you should go into politics. You'd be really good at it. You speak right good. And that, so it was, if you say it, you manifest it kind of thing. So it was manifested for me that I could end up in a life of politics. So when the opportunity came up, it wasn't so foreign that, like many women, I rejected it outright. I didn't reject it outright. A lot of women will reject it outright because they need to be asked 4, 5, 6 times. I just needed to have the offer put in front of me once.
Wow.
Or twice.
One, yeah, the Liberals weren't serious, though, Amanda. Like it would be great if you ran for us one day, but yeah, that was about it. They didn't focus. They needed to focus, execute.
So I want to.
We're hearing that one a lot lately, Lisa.
I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want to jump to 2008 when you are elected, and you kind of touched on this, that you were put into cabinet right away. What is that like, being a brand new member of parliament and getting a call from the prime minister saying, I want you in my cabinet? And also, you were one of 11 women at the time that were appointed to cabinet. You know, today the Liberals are working towards parity in their cabinet, but at the time it was, you know, really something that wasn't talked about as much. And the numbers were not even close to parity. Did you feel that weight of being one of 11 women? No. Tell me about that.
I didn't feel the weight of being one of 11 women. I will tell you that those 11 women became very close. And we're really happy when more women joined us. And we talked a lot about issues. There's a couple ways in which you can bond with people in cabinet. One is geographically, because you have so much in common. And the other one is gender.
Right.
And that's kind of how we ended up bonding. So a really good friend of mine is Leona Glucock. And Leona, when she came into cabinet, I mean, her baby was 2 months old.
Yeah.
That's it. Cooper was so young. And I saw a picture of him the other day on Facebook. I went, I'm measuring how long ago I was elected by how big your son is. You know, kind of crazy.
And I think it took her, didn't it take her 2 days to get home from Ottawa too, to fly back to her riding? She was in.
It was tough.
Yeah.
Eventually, she made the decision to move the family to the area.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest decision, actually, Rachel, is what do you do with your family?
Yeah.
And we decided, my ex, my now ex-husband, you can see how that went. My ex-husband and I decided that we were going to keep the family in Oakville. We lived in Oakville at the time because the riding changed after that. And I moved to Milton. And the reason being, I'll tell you why, it was because if you remember in 2008, we had the crisis. And that's when Gilles Duceppe and Jack Layton and who was the third one? Stéphane Dion signed off on creating that grouping together. And we were almost kicked out. We were in a minority. And I thought to myself, I cannot put myself in that kind of economic danger that I lose. Right? So let's just see how this rolls out. So that was the first big decision, was where's the family going to be? And then the second one is how to do the work. I was very, very comfortable with the work of being a minister because it was just like being a CEO. Information comes in, decision is made, you communicate it out. Pretty simple. The politics side of it, still don't get it. Still having troubles with it. But, you know, my advice to myself from 2008, or advice to a new cabinet minister, would be fight the fights that you need to fight. Don't fight all the fights. So you may not like your chief of staff. Just suck it up. Deal with it. Move on. There are bigger fights to have and bigger issues to have than fighting with PMO over who really controls you. Forget about it. Just do your work. Bring it to cabinet. Do what you need to do, make your announcements, look after your constituents, do what you can for your home, and look after your family. Notice that at the very, very, very bottom of that is look after yourself.
Yeah.
That is the life. That is the life. And even if your family lives in Ottawa, it's still the life, because you are representing 100,000 people in your riding. That's what you're elected for, and that's your job. And that's why we don't stick around too long.
What part of the politics side of the job surprised you the most?
The politics side that surprised me the most was sometimes you can have better relationships with people of a different partisan stripe than you can with people of the same partisan stripe. It's geography and gender are the two that can bind you, quite frankly. I ended up developing fantastic relationships with the people that live in my area of my flavor of my party. But that was my experience. Like Judy Scrow was very good to me when I came in. And, Carolyn Bennett and I chatted a lot, and Hetty Fry, and who else? Remind me, she went back to Newfoundland and Labrador to be Judy, the other Judy.
No.
She went back to be the Newfoundland
Judy
and Labrador
Foote.
Lieutenant Governor. Judy Foote.
Yeah.
Foote was very good to me too. So but we're all women of a certain age. We're all more mature, and age matters. And I had known them prior to going into politics in some way, shape, or form. So that was a positive. And the other side of politics is that your own party can dissolve into tribes.
Yeah. Yes.
We're seeing a lot of that.
And
right
it doesn't
now.
matter what party you are.
Yeah.
Any party can dissolve into tribes. And if you don't self-identify as to who you are, they're going to tell you who you are, and you may not fit. You may not fit. Like I remember being in a meeting once where a guy said to me, I always thought that you were this like red Tory, and then you started talking and you sounded so right wing to me. I didn't understand it. And I went, well, don't judge a book by its cover.
Wow.
I'm a little bit of both.
Right.
Yeah.
You can be both. Yeah. We're not tribes. And that was a surprise to me. So, and it's still the same though, Amanda, it's still people identify as the type of conservative you are. And I would just say that the type of conservative you are can be, I would say, impacted by the geographic part of the country you're from. That would be the biggest difference for me. But you can still all be conservative, or you can still all be liberal or NDP.
Okay, I want to dive into your leadership run just before we get to losing, which is, okay, maybe we'll go.
Wow, so we're going downhill fast here. Okay, let's talk about the unsuccessful leadership run. Yeah.
Okay, so you decided to run for the leadership. It was what year was that? 2016. Yeah. There was a lot of people in that race.
The world's longest and the world's biggest leadership race ever.
You know what? I was front row. I don't know if you remember the debate in Toronto, and everybody was in this hall, and there was so many chairs. I was front row of that debate, and I remember looking around and thinking, how can everybody say anything that's smart, because there's so many candidates. It was crazy. But I do remember your leadership run, because I, as a young female conservative in the audience, was rooting for you very much so. And I'm going to fangirl for a second. I was a staffer when you came in as minister in 2008. And, I watched you as minister for many years. And I think you deserve all the credit that you get for being such an incredible advocate, not only for women in politics and conservatives in politics, but also for bridge building, because that's a big thing that I've watched you do over the years. So you then decide that you are going to run for the leadership of the party. What's that decision like? How do you get to the point where you're thinking, I could do this. I could run the whole family here.
The whole country.
So what, and I'm going to add another layer. My husband had just been diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer's.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
Boom. In March of 2016. Wow. So I had to think about that. He wanted me to run because he had known it was always a dream. I mean, if you manifest early in your life, if you say out loud that you want to be prime minister one day, then when you got an opportunity to go for it, you got to go for it.
Yeah.
Right. And winning or losing or whatever. And man, I learned an awful lot through it. I think you learn from your failures. Boy, I learned a lot. Like that was such an incredible growing experience for me and a learning experience for me. But I mean, Rachel, you set it up exactly why I needed to get involved, was because we needed to showcase somebody on that stage that was different.
Yeah.
we needed to have all the voices represented. And if I could impact or if I could sway people to thinking about conservatism in a different way, then plus, going to be a little braggy here. I'm smart enough to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I can get along well with people. Like, I've got the skill set, no question about I have the skill set to do the job. I know, I'm confident I could do the job, but you got to be able to get elected. And that's a different beast than I always used to say that if the smartest person were to be prime minister, then Kelly Leitch would be prime minister today.
Oh, interesting.
Because she's the smartest person in the room, hands down, brilliant woman. But that wasn't going to happen. And that's just the way it is. And I would say that I needed to do it because it was a whole bunch of things. It was the Cape Breton thing. It was to say that I was going to do it. I knew I was. So the question is now, would you ever do it again?
Exactly.
And the answer is no. The answer is no. I've done it. I know what it takes. I know what my challenges are. You know how we talk about there's a path. You got to find the path.
Yeah.
I think my path is too fraught with thorns in order for me to ever make a run to be the leader of the Conservatives. I think there's too many things that can grab at me along the way that will cause it to not happen. There's not a clear path, not a clear enough path. And coming to terms with that, guys, is worth so much in therapy bills.
No kidding. Let's talk about that. The coming to terms with things, because in 2019 you lost your seat in Milton.
I did.
To a newbie Liberal and a guy who holds 3 gold medals, an Olympian. Tell us about the night of the election. How did you feel going into it? What did you expect?
I knew. Like,
you knew.
Listen, here's the secret. When I won in 2015, my very, very trusted chief of staff at the time, Andrew Brander, said to me, man, you were lucky here. You shouldn't have won. You should not have won. And I agreed with him because we felt it. We felt the momentum, the Trudeau momentum happening. It was palpable. It was there, like, no question. And the fact that we were able to squeeze it out, wow, holy mackerel. So I was happy. And that's kind of why I decided to run for leader, because if you're the leader, you got a better chance of keeping your seat. Like, that's part of the calculus. So I guess by the time Bruce got diagnosed in 2016, guys, and my kids were older and I was not the leader, I would sit home on a Saturday night and I would have the schedule put in front of me for all of the events that I would have to do for the coming weekend. And I would look at them and I would say, and I had said this to my staff, I can go and do this Saturday night event where I'm going to drive an hour to Vaughan and do some grin and grips and some pictures. And then I'm going to drive an hour home from Vaughan as well. Or I'm going to stay at home and have one of a handful of good nights with my husband before he falls into dementia. What's the answer in that question, right?
Exactly.
There's no, so it's a different thing than deciding that your kids, the question about, can you leave your kids when you go to Ottawa? Okay, so how did that, I figured that they would be better off. They didn't see me through the week anyway, because I worked as a CEO in Toronto. It was, I was there when I could be. I had more flexibility as a cabinet minister than I would have as a CEO of a company in Toronto with my kids. They saw me every weekend. I was engaged. But I knew that I had lots of time with them and I was going to have time with them in the future. But when you are confronted with this giant hourglass that suddenly is, the sand is coming out of it, of how long you're going to have a husband, a partner, a lover, it's going to be over in 2.5 to 3 years. Your priorities switch real quick. So I never announced I wasn't going to run. And I became the deputy leader. But Andrew Scheer, when he called to ask me to be his deputy leader, I told him, boss, I think I'm actually going to stop politics and I'm actually thinking I'm not going to even ride out. And it's not because of you and it's not a commentary on you winning, but it's just because Bruce. And if I'm not going to be leader. And he said, well, I'm glad I called because I want you to be the deputy leader. And I thought, okay. And then I said to him, can we talk about my schedule? He said, sure. I need to go in on Tuesday and be out on Wednesday night. He said, yeah, no problem. So I would go to question period on Tuesday morning. I would do all my committee Tuesday, Wednesday. Sometimes I have to stay to Thursday morning. That's just fine as well. But I worked from the office. I didn't have to do Thursday. I didn't have to do Friday. And then we just had all these issues come up, Amanda. So we had the Jody Wilson-Raybould thing. So I was on that, and I was on the Tony Clement disaster. I was on anything that came up that was hands-on in a moment. I did. And then I would bring Bruce with me to Ottawa, and I would have people who would sit with him and keep him and allow him, keep him close to me and walk around with me. So I wasn't checked out of being an MP, but the community side of my life that is so vital, that was done. It was done, and I don't regret the decision. But I am a testament to show you that it is very important to your election prospects to be in your community, to door knock, and do those things, because I did not do a single ounce of that from 16 until the election in 19.
Wow. So when you look back, though, and I think given your response, I think I know the answer, but would you do any of that differently now? Knowing the outcome, knowing that you wouldn't win in 2019, you could turn back the clock. Would you change any of that?
No, because I think about, I got the trips I needed to get in with him, Amanda. So we went to Costa Rica. We went to, when I was an MP, I would travel to visit other places. I would pay for him to go with me. So he got to travel with me a little bit. We squeezed out a lot in those years. We also did Alzheimer's awareness and activism.
Yeah.
And we would go to communities, and he would speak until he couldn't speak anymore. And then I would speak for him. And we had a spotlight we were able to take and show a little bit of what it was like to go through. So no, I mean, you can only make decisions with the information you have at the time. I'm happy with the decision I made at the time, and I don't regret it. It sucked to lose, though. Let's go back to the night of the 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sucked to lose, but
you knew it
I
was
knew
coming,
I was
but it still stung. You knew it was
coming. Still. Yeah. But you know what? I felt bad. I felt I had let down my team.
The party or your team?
No, my local team, because they were so upset. They're crying and they're upset, and I'm up on stage and I'm giving my speech. And then the next day I see a picture that somebody took. I don't know who took it. It was in the paper. And I see me in the foreground giving my speech, and my two kids, who are now young men, who are teenagers, behind me, and they're laughing and smiling.
Oh no.
It was over. Because it was over.
Wow.
They were thrilled tonight. It was a party. Let's go. She's done.
Gosh.
And even when opportunities come up, when the provincial Conservatives were talking during the time of the Patrick Brown, Doug Ford thing, my name was bandied around, and then we had like multiplicity of leadership races in the Conservatives. And I'll tell you, my older son, who's now 22, I guess it was. When was it? When did we go through the first one where Andrew Scheer left? Whatever year that was, 2021. I remember we're in the kitchen, it's Christmas, and my neighbor said to JC, my older son, so is your mom thinking about running? And I hear I'm in the other room, and he goes, well, let me put it this way. If she does, I'm suing for emancipation.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, obviously he was watching Ozark too much, but that's what he said. I'm suing for emancipation. So I knew my kids were totally against. And then when COVID came along, I got time. I spent time at home with Bruce, but I had a job. The night of the election, Rachel, my number one thought was, how do I pay my mortgage? Because you stop getting paid. Yeah. That's the hard truth, right?
Yeah.
The day of the election, I don't get paid. Adam gets the paycheck.
Wow.
Sucks, eh? It's like that. It's like just like that. So there's no paycheck coming.
So how did you survive? How did you survive that period? Like, let's just finally talk the last thing here.
Okay.
What is post-politics life like? What was it like for you?
Yeah. Megan Leslie gave me the best advice after she lost in 15. And it wasn't even advice. I remember a conversation we had after she lost. And she said, Lisa, all I could think about was, how do I pay my mortgage? And exactly that came to my mind, because my husband's on disability. He isn't working anymore. I got the house. I got the kids going to university. How am I going to deal with all of this? So I knew that in whatever I did in the hours, minutes, days after my defeat, I had to put out the best foot forward for future employment. So I was going to take every request for any interview from anyone. And the party couldn't say anything about it because I was done. So that night, I talked to all the channels. The next morning, I'm up at 7 a.m. talking about being a loser. That was it. I just did that. I just did it over and over again. And I just was myself, my very authentic self, gave my thoughts. And then friends would set me up for coffees with various people in businesses and just seeing whether or not there would be a fit and trying to figure out what to do. Good friend of mine in Ottawa, Jackie LaRock, gave me a few communications things for me to do, which kind of got me through November and December into January. And then CIBC came through and I ended up having a job with them. And I'm a lucky, lucky, lucky woman. Wow. It worked out for me. But I knew that I had to perform in the days. Like there was no sulking away to lick my wounds. Right. I had to be positive. Yeah. I had to be gracious, knowledgeable, thoughtful, not screaming about who won the election and who didn't win the election, principled. And it worked because when I got to CIBC, it's hard for banks to hire politicians, especially ones freshly booted out. It's not an easy transition. And I just remember the chief economist, actually, it was more than the chief, it was everybody at the bank would say to me, yeah, I'm not really a conservative, but I've always liked you as a minister, Lisa. And that was it. So your reputation is gold, right?
Yeah.
It's everything.
And I think yours is
I have two questions, two kind of related questions. One is they always say that politics is in our blood. Yeah. So do you miss it? And then the add-on question would be, would you come back?
Yeah. So do I miss it? Of course I miss it. My entire book of business at CIBC is sticking my nose back into public policy and commenting on it without the strings of having to be tied to any partisan. And I will give advice to any minister who will ask me. I do believe that when you become a minister of the Crown, there is brother and sisterhood there, without a question. Sure. And that goes across party lines. And if a Minister Wilkinson or Francois Philippe Champagne were to ask me for advice or assistance, I am there because we're serving Canada together. It's not about partisanship. Now, it's
Do you hear that, Liberal friends who are listening?
Well, it's true.
Take her up on some of that advice.
Oh, no, I hear, and I'm naming people who I talk to on a lot, and it is true. And Ahmad Hussein, I hear from him a lot too. We chat. So he reached out right after I lost. He was very kind. He reached out and said, you're one of the good ones. We're going to miss you. So I give him props for that. The kindness is such an easy thing to give to another human. And so often we think it's a bother to the other person. It's not a bother. And if it's a bother to them, they don't deserve it anyway. And you're better off. So do I, my business is still in public policy. I love my country. I care about it. But I'm not going to be prime minister. So why would I go back to be a minister? I'm not. Like, let's just be realistic here. And my kids have kind of gotten over the notion that I'm, that politics is terrible, to the extent where I think my oldest is actually going to work on the next election. And I can't believe it. I'm in shock.
That's so great.
They never took part in any of my stuff. But you know what it is? All the people that surrounded them. So the Brock Hamleys and the Jody Parps and the Andrew Branders and the Allison Haleys, all of my core team who were with me for 10 years, my kids idolize them. Right. They want to be like them. And now I got one kid who he doesn't want to do partisanship necessarily, but like he'd like to work for a GRPR firm for the year leading up to the election with issues. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I love that.
He's got a business degree. So there you go. And the last name is Raitt. So that could cut either way. Who knows? But have I ruled out politics? It would have to be a remarkable appeal to me on a human level. Let me put it that way, because I've got a very, very incredible career, and I know how lucky I am to have it. So I don't give that up lightly. You never know what happens, so you can't say no. But it would have to be a remarkable path, situation, world to, and there's always a possibility that maybe someday, somewhere, somehow there's a leader, and it could be any of the leaders now, that suddenly I click and I go, yeah, that's who I want to work for. Because I did have that feeling and that attachment to Stephen Harper. I wanted to work for him, and I'm glad I did.
Well, I hope that remarkable proposal comes to you someday, because I, for one, would love to see you as leader and prime minister of this country at some point.
Wow.
And I say that having, again, been next to you in politics for decades. So your authentic self is just so incredible and such a breath of fresh air in the political world. And we are so thrilled and so happy that you took some time to chat with us today. I know our listeners are probably really interested in getting to know you more now, because everyone is when they hear your story. So please, come back and chat with us again. We would love to continue to follow your involvement in politics in whatever way or capacity that is. And we'll have your son on as soon as he runs for office.
JC, oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, the next time I felt, honestly, so you may have got way too many truths out of me, because I felt like I was having drinks with you guys.
That's
tonight,
the goal.
Kind of thing.
That's the goal.
It was very easy conversation. So I don't think I told too many truths out there, but
we love it.
Okay.
We love.
I didn't tell you any cabinet confidences.
Oh, next episode, next time.
It was a great conversation.
All right, thanks so much, Lisa, and we will be right back with Maryam Monsef. Our next guest was elected as a Liberal Member of Parliament in 2015. The same year, she was appointed to Cabinet as President of the Privy Council, and then held portfolios of democratic institutions, international development, economic development, and women and gender equity. Whew, what a resume. In 2021, she lost her seat to a new Conservative Member of Parliament, and here to tell us about her amazing experience is the amazing Maryam Monsef. How are you?
Thank you, Rachel. I am well. I see you and Amanda on the TV all the time, so it's good to see you again.
We're so happy that you're here. I have personally known you for many years as part of the Liberal Party and watched your incredible run in politics as a cabinet minister. But we want to take many steps back and start from the beginning. And I think the first question that our listeners want to know is tell us a little bit about you and how did you decide to get involved in politics?
Well, listeners, hello. I'm in Peterborough, Ontario right now. It's the only place I've ever known as home, the only place I've ever been safe in. And the reason I decided to run wasn't because I grew up my whole life dreaming about politics. I was going to be a teacher, but I decided to run because at the time in the municipal election in Peterborough, there was nobody running against the incumbent. And I spent a lot of time, being a super nerd in the council chamber, live tweeting back when Twitter was a fun community-based place, live tweeting the proceedings in City Hall. And so, I care about my community, and here I am Monday nights live tweeting about what's happening, and then no one's going to run in opposition. So myself and a group of local folks decided to look for a candidate. And when we couldn't find anybody, I was like, I guess it's me. And originally I was running as a nuisance candidate just to raise awareness about the issues. And then among the 150 people I spoke with, there were some wise folks who said, if you're going to run, we never want to hear the words nuisance candidate come out of your mouth. You're going to run a credible campaign so that afterwards doors open for you. So I ran for mayor because I care about my community. I lose by 1,337 votes or something like that. And then afterwards, I got calls from the progressive parties saying, hey, do you want to run for us? And, it was a confluence of a bunch of things, including Dean Del Mastro, our MP at the time, resigning, which triggered a by-election. I ran with the best team ever and won, even though I didn't think I had won. It was still a shock for me. And so the decision to run really was, this community gave me so much, including that sense of safety and belonging, and I wanted to give back. So it was a labor of love and a bit of an accident.
So
as many of these stories go, right?
I know.
We hear this all the time.
It's a
like
theme.
Sort of, it is a theme, how you accidentally fall into what becomes one of the biggest passions of your life. It's kind of remarkable. But you came in 2015 riding a huge wave of support for the Trudeau Liberals. It must have been an extraordinary time to be in politics. Can you take us back to that time and tell us what it was like in Ottawa, what it was like to be part of that team?
Well, in the community, the most common phrase people used after that election was, it was as if a dark cloud had lifted. There was a lot of hope. There was a lot of optimism. And that day on November 4th, 2015, when the new government was sworn in, when the first gender balanced cabinet was revealed, this beautiful sunny day in November, and Canadians were lined up along that path to Rita Hall. And there was just so much excitement and just that sense of civic responsibility, but also a celebration of being Canadian and living in a democracy. So that was pretty special. But if you look, at the footage from that day, you're not going to see me like super excited and into it, front row, grinning. You're going to see me hiding in the back with, Mark Garneau and, the tall men, because I was like, what just happened?
Wow.
Really?
I had won the election, and that in itself was a big deal. No woman from this riding had ever represented the community in Ottawa before, so I was the first. I was 30 years old. I didn't expect to win, and here I am, the first Afghan in parliament. And so it was a big deal to win the seat in the first place. But to be appointed to cabinet, at the time the youngest person around the table, the first Muslim around the table, in a big role that would end up being a hot potato of a file, a political hot potato anyway. It hadn't sunk in, and I was nervous and I was terrified and I was excited, but mostly I was freaking out.
So what was that? What was that like when you pick up the phone and Justin Trudeau says to you, "I want to appoint you to cabinet"? What did you do?
Well, he does it in person.
Oh, in person.
He does it in person, and I don't really know what the process is. I don't come from a family where politics has been the norm. I didn't study poli-sci at Trent. I studied psychology and got a science degree and started a mental health advocacy group and read Pashmina. This was never the path that I, got involved in too deeply. And I didn't become a liberal until 2015 because I didn't understand partisan politics, frankly. So what was it like to be asked by the Prime Minister-elect that he wants you around the big boys and girls table? Well, it's an honor, but I immediately went into imposter syndrome.
You did.
And, what I said to the Prime Minister was, Prime Minister, there's a lot of pain in my community. There's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of potential. And I need to focus on that as the Member of Parliament for Peterborough. And he said, well, don't you think that your community deserves a seat around the cabinet table? And just like that, I started to feel like, okay, if I bring my community to the table, I'm going to be okay. But I was around the table with Ralph Goodale and Chrystia Freeland and Kirsty Duncan and all these incredible people I had admired from afar and watched. So that those feelings of, but do I belong around this table? They didn't really fully go away. And certainly that first year in politics, when everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, if I could describe that first year by any phrase, it would be trial by fire. There were so many days where I was like, I don't belong here. I need to leave. And it was really, truly that sense of responsibility to my community that kept me there, and really thoughtful colleagues who supported me along the way. But those feelings never left.
Yeah, I think that's amazing to hear, because often we think that when you're sitting at the cabinet table, you've made it. You're in it. And so to hear that, as somebody who sat in so many cabinet portfolios, to have that imposter syndrome, even sitting there, I think will resonate with a lot of our listeners. Can you talk to us about the gender parity in 2015 in cabinet? The prime minister came in and he said 50% of my cabinet is going to be female cabinet ministers. You were one of them. Did you think that was a fabulous policy? As one of the women in that cabinet, did you have any reservations on that 50% number? How did you feel about it?
I've been raised by strong women. I grew up in a community where women are getting good things done and opening doors for one another. So I was thrilled, and I gotta say, I've been in rooms where I'm the only woman, and I've been around that table where half of the room is occupied by women, and it's a lot easier when you're not the only one raising your hand about traditional quote unquote women's issues. But more importantly, maybe just as importantly actually, is that there were people around that table who, woman or man, had experiences that resonated with me and with the humans who had sent me to Ottawa.
Yeah.
So when you have a school bus, or when you have a city bus driver around the table, when you've got someone who's run a homeless shelter, when you've got someone from Bay Street sitting next to someone who's been in politics for 40 years, sitting next to someone who's been raised by a single mom and came to Canada as a refugee, those experiences plus the gender factor make a world of difference in the conversations that are had, in the way decisions are arrived at. So it definitely made it easier. And then at the same time, Rachel, in those early days, there was a lot of conversation about, but are these meritorious appointments?
Right, exactly.
Definitely.
And so this is where, it took me a while to be able to articulate what the issue with that was, because it had never happened before. And when you break a glass ceiling, it's exciting, right? It's exciting. You broke a glass ceiling. We celebrated. We clapped for it on election night. But what we forget is when that glass ceiling is broken, there are cuts and bruises and scars and a bunch of people cleaning up the shards. And maybe I'll come back to that. But when those glass ceilings are broken too, it's a new way of doing things. So when you get that whole, but do they deserve to be there? Is it meritorious? It took me a while to be able to say, wait, no, I didn't get elected and then get appointed because I was raised by a single mom, because I relied on, the women's shelter and the food banks and social safety nets. I didn't get there because of the challenges. I got there despite the challenges. And there is merit to that. So that was the part about me that bugged me about how that narrative went. But more importantly, are you telling me that in the history of this country, that there has never been enough women qualified to make up half of the decision-making tables around the cabinet table, and that's why we've never seen it? No, there have been barriers upon barriers, and women more qualified than me, more talented than me, have been held back from these opportunities. I just feel like we missed the opportunity to have that conversation at that time because it was so new.
Oh, I just got goosebumps.
Me too.
Yeah, that's what
I got hot. It's bringing up feelings. I'm getting hot.
Yeah,
it's good, and it's true. And I wish I had that. I don't know why. It's funny. I'm listening to you, and I'm like, there were many, many, many nights around 2015 on CBC when we were debating this issue, right? And I never used that argument, and that was the argument that should have been used. And it sounds so obvious to me now, but it's funny what we sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees, right? So
especially when it's never happened, Amanda.
Exactly. Okay, so you go on to hold a number of cabinet portfolios. You become a very popular minister. You're a great communicator. You're often seen behind the mic. You raise a lot of profile for yourself. And then fast forward to the last election, and you lose your seat, which was such a surprise. And was it, well, first of all, let me ask you, was that a surprise? Did you know it was coming? So we talked to Lisa about this, and she had said, I knew it was coming. I knew what was coming. Did you know it was coming? And if so, was it still a surprise the night of the election?
Okay, well, I will answer that, but let me just go back to, I never felt like I was popular. I never felt any of those lovely things that you said, Amanda. No, every day in an institution not designed for people like me, in an institution designed, frankly, to keep most of us out, I felt like an outsider, even though I had the best boss who, put women and equity at the center of the work, who said, go ahead and start a brand new department, and, made a world of difference on sexual health, reproductive rights, supporting women's organizations. I never felt like I belonged in that place. And for all the kind, warm, thoughtful, generous people I encountered, because I'm a people pleaser, all it took was like the one or two people who said not nice things. And when you make mistakes in a place like that, it's amplified and it's under the, spotlight of public scrutiny. And there's so many people counting on you to fail, hoping you will fail. So it never felt great, but it did make a difference to be able to save lives, create opportunities, support others in their leadership journey. And, fast forward to election night in 2021, no, I wasn't surprised, Amanda. In fact, I knew I lost that election the day the election was called. And I, if your listeners recall, the election was called on the same day that Afghanistan fell back into the hands of the Taliban. And, I don't know any other Afghans who were in the G20 or G7 in a cabinet position at that time. And, my getting elected had made a lot of noise for Afghans who are scattered all over the world. And so they celebrated it and they were so kind about it. And so they knew about me. Yeah. So when Kabul falls and that emergency evacuation process begins and all the chaos that ensues, it seemed as though all the calls from Afghan diaspora all over the world and in Afghanistan were coming to my constituency office. So I actually took people out of my campaign office, put them back in the constituency so that somebody could be there to respond to those calls. So the election for me wasn't knocking doors and, doing so with enthusiasm and excitement. I lost heart, and I lost heart in the months leading up to Kabul falling, because I was trying behind the scenes to raise the voices of the Afghan women who were saying the Taliban are not going to be nice guys. Suddenly they haven't changed. They're not letting us be a part of the peace process. An evacuation could be catastrophic. I was trying to raise their voices to no avail, and then to literally see people fall from the sky because they're trying to escape that horrendous situation and another rule by the Taliban. I lost heart. So election night, it was sad, and I was already grieving so much that had been lost. And, there's a lot of loss in life, right? I have lost enough people, place, land, wealth, jobs, to know that, there's a spectrum of pain, there's a spectrum of grief. So it really, the loss of Afghanistan at the same time put the loss of that election into perspective for me. But losing hurts.
Yeah.
Losing publicly hurts extra. And losing, if you lose and, your space is taken up by somebody who cares about the things that you do, who makes things better, and you're like, okay, this was a worthy opponent, it was the right call, it matters. But if, you lose your seat to someone who cares about the opposite things, who, doesn't support the community or represent them in an effective way, or, in some cases, not mine, but the person who you lose to ends up crossing the floor and joining your team.
Right.
That pain, that loss hurts in a different way.
So let's talk a little bit about that pain and that loss. And, we're now a few years past your loss. Can you reflect on how you absorb that and how you move on? What were your initial thoughts when you realized, you've come from this incredible cabinet background, you've spent years in Ottawa, and now what? How do you internalize that?
So I'm a psych major, so I believe everybody needs therapy. But I think whenever you experience a loss, having a therapist helps. Certainly helped me. Getting a coach helps. Surrounding yourself with people who care about you helps. I did something very few people have the privilege of being able to do. This was before I had a baby. So what I did was actually go away. And I went away for, an eat, pray, love journey of
You
sorts.
did?
That's
I
so
did.
cool.
And
Tell us.
tell us. It's the best gift I have ever given myself.
Oh,
It was time and space away. And, losing on its own is hard enough, but I had been going at a breakneck pace for about 7-8 years. So imagine, for the Ontario folks listening, like you're on the 401 and you're driving in the left shoulder and you're going the speed limit and you're not pulling over. You're just going to keep going because you got to go. And you've got a team around you that, caffeinates you and feeds you and like gives you directions, but
like
you got to keep going.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you get pulled over. It's like whiplash.
Totally.
And you get pulled over, and it took probably 6 months for my nervous system to come back to some level of homeostasis.
Wow.
It took time to sleep and a lot of time on the yoga mat and the prayer mat and swimming and picking up the phone and talking to about 100 leaders across the country for me to start feeling like myself. And I did have moments where I was like, wait, am I still me? Do I still like me? What am I going to do next? I've had these incredible opportunities at a young age. What next? And, the silver lining in, being in a place where you always feel like an oval in a circle is I never became the job. I never felt like this is who I am. It never became part of my identity. And, if the beginning of my career in federal politics was trial by fire, and the end of it was, the trauma on the tarmac and the loss of Afghanistan, the middle part is where I actually found my footing. And I was like, okay, if I just follow my North Star, which is supporting women and their families, I will be okay in a place where there's really no book on how to be really, really good at what you do. So finding that North Star, taking that time after the election is actually what helped me build onward. And I'm literally in the business now of supporting other women leaders who are either preparing for those big jobs and, want to position themselves well and want to go into it eyes wide open, and also supporting women who are in those executive positions, who are around the big boys and girls tables and who are trying to navigate big lifts in places not designed for them. So I've learned to channel those hard-won lessons into something that helps others, particularly women, learn from those mistakes so that they don't make those same mistakes and have the space to make their own.
What do you think, if you were to kind of articulate a couple of those mistakes, as you coin them, what do you think those were? Like looking back, if you're like, there's a couple of things that I think I would have done differently, or here's two takeaways from that time. What would you say?
So the late, great Ian Shugart and I became friends. And actually we started working on, without realizing it, a book, a module of like what to do and what not to do in politics and how to get things done. So we started that, and then he left this earth too soon. But first of all, eyes wide open. If you're going into a place where there's never been anybody like you, understand that things will be a little bit harder for you, and that you will be judged by different standards. And accepting that and preparing for that goes a long, long way. Similarly, because no Afghan Muslim, youngish like me had ever been in a position like that, I didn't know where to go for supports and training. And Amanda, we've talked about this before. I couldn't go to someone who could provide me, say, with media training, who could sit me down and say, look, what comes out of your mouth, the exact same words are going to be perceived differently than if they come from the mouth of someone who's, say, older, maler, whiter.
Right.
And so being aware of the double, triple standards and the conscious and unconscious biases and how identity politics can be used to hurt, that's something that I would have done differently. And Amanda, I would have spent way more time on relationships, because in the end, and particularly during the pandemic, it was the relationships that I had built with leaders across the country that helped me do my job, that helped us save lives, that helped us set a precedent. We in that first year of the pandemic, 1 million women and children were able to find safety in a women's shelter or a sexual assault center or an organization when they were fleeing their abusers, with whom they were stuck with in those really difficult days. That only happened because the relationships that we were able to build led to a message to the cabinet, which was, Prime Minister, whether quarantine is mandatory or not every home is a safe home. And immediately he heard that and he did something about that. But those relationships resulted in lives being saved. So I would have spent a lot more time on that than the small things that I probably spent way too much time worrying about. Oh, and I would have gotten off social media way sooner.
You would have.
That stuff clouds your mind. It makes you think that the world is a darker, more hateful place than it really is. And it took me too long to learn that. The world is actually filled with generous, kind-hearted people who want to see good things get done. And they're not the ones who are the loudest on social media. So if you're in a leadership position and if you're a people pleaser, get off social media, because that's not where your people are and that's not the true narrative out there.
Yeah, we're going to cover that, I think, in another episode. We're going to have a whole episode about that because it's so true. I want to ask you one final question, just the lingering thing that is top of mind.
I have 10 questions left.
I know. Do you want to take it?
I have so many questions. No, you go.
We'll have to have
But I
you
might have to
back.
throw in one more. Okay, go.
Okay. I'll do my last question, then you do yours. I think the thing for me is, you were in so many cabinet portfolios. You had such a purpose for being there, and so many challenges that you faced. Why did you never walk away? Why did you never say, enough is enough? You had, just to put it on the table, I mean, there was controversies throughout your time as minister. The media was no friend of yours towards the end of your time at the cabinet table, I'd say throughout it. And so why did you never say, I'm done. This isn't for me. I'm walking away.
And sometimes walking away is the strong and the right decision. So I'll start with that. I didn't, though, for a number of reasons. One, on the days when it was hardest to get out of bed, what I remembered was why I was there. My why was so strong. It was for my community that it kept me there. And I also had people around me who had my back, right? Who said, this is hard and, you're paving a path and we understand how difficult it is, but we've got you. And one of my advisors, and I'll never forget her saying this, she said, every day you show up to work is a day where you win. Because when you walk away, if you walk away, that's the day that the bad guys win. So don't let that happen. And, I also got really good things done. So for all the hardship, I was seeing an impact. Right. I still see that impact, Rachael, when, high-speed internet access is expanded to communities and I get to see it, I get to read about it, I get to benefit from it. Yeah. That feels good. That matters to me. When I hear about, Elevate Aviation now have their own, movie about women in aviation, that gives me joy because I was part of their, early story to help elevate what they were doing. And so, the Canoe Museum is going to open in the summer and I help bring funds there. So there's so many reasons to do this work. And I highly recommend it to anybody listening. There's so many reasons to do it. It's worth it. If I could go back, I would do it all over again. I would just do it differently, better prepared.
Would you do it again? Is that what we were both going to ask?
Final question.
If I rewind the tape?
No, will you do it? I guess the question for me would be, you didn't grow up with an ambition to be a politician, but you became one. And then you found yourself at the highest ranks of that table, at the cabinet table, in a number of portfolios. You sort of checked all the boxes, like you did the things, right? Would you run again? Is that an ambition for you? And if not, I would love to leave the listeners with the what's next for Maryam.
I have unfinished business, but I don't know if I'm going to run again. And I say that for a number of reasons. One, I love what I do right now. There's so much joy in my work, and there's a need to support other leaders, particularly women, in this particular moment in time, that I'm fulfilled and I'm making a difference. Two, I'm the mom to a little boy. And I think one of my biggest jobs in life is raising him to be a decent man. And he's fun. And then maybe the third reason I can't give you an exact answer right now is this. Towards the end of 2019 session, I was part of an event that Canada 2020 hosted called Madam Premier. Yes. And it was with all the women premiers. They were all in the same room talking about their stories. And it was one of the most incredible rooms I have ever been in. And my job was to deliver the closing keynote. And I spoke after the Right Honorable Kim Campbell, and I had put so much thought into what I was going to say. And in that room, I heard about loss. These women had lost or walked away, but they lost something in the process. And I understood that day that some wounds will never heal. I also understood that even though those women were no longer in those positions, what they started, the work they began, continued to this day.
Yeah.
So I'd like to believe that I'm part of a movement of women who did what they could when they could. And it's, as the Jewish saying goes, it's not for us to finish the work. It's not up to us to walk away from it either. So I started something that, those before me had made significant impact on, and that work continues to this day. And in so many ways, that's enough for me right now.
I love everything you shared today. I loved it.
Oh.
And I, for one, hope I will see your name on a ballot again. But if not, we'll be following your journey. We can't thank you enough for the time, for the candor, the honesty in this conversation. I know it'll be a favored amongst our listeners, and we appreciate you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, women.
We'll be right back. Wow, those were some pretty amazing conversations. Hey, Amanda?
Some of my favorite that we've had so far.
When we asked two incredible women who have sat at cabinet tables for years to come on and talk about their loss, I thought it's going to be an amazing conversation. But really, I think just when we juxtapose the two experiences, Lisa and Maryam, and how they process that loss differently and their why they entered politics, just an incredible conversation. And I'm so thankful to have this podcast and this platform to be able to have these incredible talks, these chats about topics like this. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you for getting to this point in the podcast. We know it was a long one. And we'll be back next week with another incredible conversation.
See you soon.